Hello, my name is Mike, and I'm here to tell you about my classroom observation. As educators, it's important for us to build on prior knowledge that the kids have previously learned. Well, in Rochester, they utilize that through Bridges in Mathematics curriculum. So I observed a first grade class, Miss Tutorish, and her lesson was on adding multiples of 10 that end in 0. So to begin that lesson, she tapped into their prior knowledge by asking about place value, to make sure they understood the difference between 10s and 1s. Then she showed a quick video on adding by multiples of 10, which really got the students engaged. So then she taught the lesson, which involved PowerPoint and how to add them, much like they did with the ones place, except now they have zeros, and then you just had to add the tens digits. When she was done with that, which took about 10-15 minutes, she introduced a new game. And the game was called Race to Zero. And in that game, students are given 9 stacks of 10, and they have to try and get down to 0. They would draw a card. In this case, the student would have drew a 3. So they'd have to take away 3 stacks, which would be 30. And then they're going to write it down. They'll cross out the 3 and subtract 30. And then player 2 will go, and then the first one that gets down to 0. Right? And each step, they need to figure out how much they need to get to 0 and actually record that down. While they're working on that, other groups, the class is divided into 6 stations altogether, but those stations all involve from prior knowledge and lessons that they had learned throughout the year. And it helps them better understand those concepts and then building towards the current one, because a lot of them involve multiples of 10. In this game called the frog jump, the student spins it, finds out if they have to add or subtract. So they roll their 2 dice and they get a 7. Second one goes into the total. So now they have to figure out what the missing number is if they have to add or subtract. Well, they use a number rack, which they have, each student, to figure out what it is. And in this case, they would see that 7 plus 5 equals 12. Then they would be able to, they take their missing numbers from over here. So 5, if this was a 7, that was a 3. And then they're going to add those, and whoever has the highest wins. And a lot of these games, you'll see that they deal with inequalities, meaning in this one, whoever had the highest score wins. So they have to compare the 2 numbers to see which one wins. Another game is pattern blocks puzzles. They had the pieces that we're familiar with, and they had to build it, see how many pieces it was used to make each shape. They had to figure out which one used the least and which one used the most. So again, they're comparing inequalities, which one was greater and which one was less. Another game was called the 3D Tower Race. And in that, students had a bucket of Unifix cubes. They'd roll their die. They would get a certain number, and they would get 10. And they would have to build and fill their placemat with the Unix cubes. And the problem solving comes in when they have stacks that have just a few. They have to figure out how they can fill up each of those stacks, each of those 3Ds. And they'd fill out a chart like this. I rolled this and this, I took that many cubes, and I have enough to fill this tower. One of the other games is called 2 turns to build. So the student would take their makeshift spinner, roll it, they get a 30. They would take 3 stacks of 10 to make their 30. And then they would roll, and they got a 5, and then they would take 5. Then they would record that number in the tens, and then in the ones place with the 5, and then they get 35. And then student number 2 would go and see what they get, and again, they're going to compare which one is greater and which one is less to declare the winner. So as we see in all these games, they do mix concepts that you've learned before, and they introduce new ones, and they build on your prior knowledge from the other ones. And again, it's very important that as educators, we understand these concepts so that way we can better teach the students to prepare them as they move up in grades. Thank you for watching.